Hello and welcome to a new episode on the Rays of Sunshine podcast. I'm Pritesh Chauhan and I'm really excited to have you join me today. We all know of a teacher, a family member, a friend, an author or a singer that has made a profound impact on our life. One small piece of advice, some encouragement, a lesson learned or a powerful story that has changed the way we think about the world, the opportunities that we strive for and the dreams that we believe achievable. I call these people Rays of Sunshine. In this episode, I speak to Shivani Pau. Shivani is the visionary founder of the globally top 1% ranked podcast, A Millennial Mind. Through this platform, she empowers millennials by showcasing their unique strengths and fostering confidence amongst women. She is a distinguished podcast host, performance coach, TEDx speaker, and entrepreneur. Graduating from Warwick University and previously excelling as a management consultant, Shivani boldly left her corporate career to follow her passion. Recently, she has been instrumental in coaching and mentoring leaders, equipping them with advanced tools and practices to boost employee engagement, enhance staff retention, and elevate overall team performance and productivity. After season 1 of this podcast, I asked you and many others in my community who they would love me to speak to, and Shivani's name kept coming up. I briefly seen that she was a speaker at an event that some of my LinkedIn contacts had gone to, but that was all. My curiosity led me to explore Shivani's podcast and work, and I can see why people suggested her. I also feel like I share similar values or ideas which made me really want to bring her to this podcast. Relatively speaking, Shivani is way too big for this podcast. A rising, confident star, but I believe in this Rays of Sunshine ethos so much that I had to reach out and invite her to join me. Like with a few people in the season, I was blown away at the speed and graciousness of her acceptance, and I've been buzzing all week in anticipation to share a brief moment with Shivani. Help one person. That was always the goal with Rainbow Boosters, and when you visit shivanipau.com or get to know her, you can see that she's realized this through her experiences, skills and drive. That she is opening up new spaces to help many people through her podcast and her performance planner business. And she takes a deep responsibility in her mission to do this. She's a great example of a ray of sunshine. I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. Hi Shivani, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining Rays of Sunshine. I ask everyone when we start, who is their ray of sunshine? Like, who is the person, the teacher or the artist that has the biggest impact on your life, and like, how have they shaped you today?
You know what? I think it's very easy for us to look at like an inspirational figure or to kind of call someone out on our journey. But I would actually say my biggest strength is my mum. You know, she is so opposite from me as well, which is why people would be like, oh, that's an interesting one. I know a lot of people probably say their parents, but what I mean by that is my mum's not outspoken like me. She's not very talkative like me. She's not dramatic in her storytelling like me. She's very soft. She's very sweet. But I think she's the strongest person I know. And she's the person that's believed in me so much from when I was a kid and I was doing really badly in school. She'd always be like, you are going to be something. You are going to do something. You're so amazing. Even now when I have days where I'm like, I just want to give up, mom. Like, I just can't do it anymore. I don't know if I can do it again. And, you know, she's always the person to pick me up. And I think that when you talk about a ray of sunshine, I think it's talking about the ray of sunshine that continuously shines bright. And I would say that my mom is that for me.
I love that. Parents have been a common thread in everyone's answers, but for very different reasons. And I was watching something yesterday, and the parents were probably like my age, so I'm just over 40, and I was like, the way that we respond to our parents is so different. They're like, how do parents know it's always going to be okay? I don't know it's going to be okay today, but I've got to tell my kids that it's always going to be okay. But they will always believe that, like, yeah, there's a power in a parent, and I love that your mum is that for you. Has there been like a moment in your personal life or your career where like a small change, an intervention has made like a massive impact or transformative impact, altering like the course of your life specifically?
Oh gosh, so many. I think the biggest one would probably be when I studied at Warwick Business School. So just to give context, I studied law at Warwick. And I studied law because, you know, my parents were like, you're quite argumentative, you're quite outspoken, you always want to talk about loads of things, you want to debate things all the time. They were like, you should be a lawyer. And I was like, all right, okay. So I did law and I hated it, absolutely hated it. Found it so difficult. Found that you had to be quite manipulative, found that you had to find like all those little tiny things to like prove someone guilty.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do it. And then I just believed for so long, I think for like 25 years of my life, that I was just not clever. Same transpired in my job. I was never like the best, and I never found something that I really enjoyed until my job at Eon. So I was working at an energy company. They told us all to do this like diploma in business school, and that was at Warwick. And I was like, I'm not going back to Warwick again. And I was like, I just told my parents, like, I'm just not going. And they were like, yeah, but and I was like, the problem was, is if we went, we had to then stay at Eon for 2 years.
Right.
I was living in Nottingham at the time. And I was like, I don't want to be in Nottingham for any longer. I mean, I didn't even know the job was in Nottingham when I applied. It was so, well, that's a story for another day. But I thought, I don't want to go back. And they were like, just do it. And it was like, you had to pay the money back if you had to go. Then I was like, I just feel like it's not the right time. And they were like, just try it and see where it goes. And I would say that that course changed my life. It allowed me to think so differently. It allowed me to really explore that I have strengths within me that I didn't know about. And it allowed me to show me that I can love education, and I do love education as long as it's aligned with me. And that changed a fundamental thing in my brain, which showed me my self-worth. It showed me that I have value to give, and it showed me that I had had this narrative about myself for so long, which I think so many of us do.
Yeah.
And I had the power to change that.
I think that's amazing. I think, education at any point is really interesting, but when you find something that really sits with you, it changes everything. 2 years ago, I did the mini marketing MBA again, and I was like, no one else is studying marketing right now, but only those that really care about it. I'm not. Do I really need to study, or should I? And I was like, I just got to do it, because I don't know if I know all the things I know. And it changed my life, like in the same way. And sometimes it just helps getting over that fear, which I think is great.
Wow.
I just came back from holiday, and I just reread Dr. Brian Weiss's Many Lies, Many Masters after 10 years. And the first time I read that book, it just really changed my perspective about spirituality, the relationships I have with people, it's so many things. And I just reread it again, and it's done that again. It's just given me this inner like Zen, inner calm that I didn't get. And that's only 200 pages of a book. Have you found books? Are there certain books that have done things for you? Like which ones? I'm adding to my reading list basically. Which ones connect with you?
This is an interesting one, because I'm not sure if you will, but it's called The Insecure Girl's Handbook.
Okay.
So I wish I could say, like, by the way, I've read all of the self-development books. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was the first book that changed my life. How to Win Friends and Influence People, Who Moved My Cheese, Atomic Habits. All of these books have had a profound impact on my life. But the one that I keep going back to is this book called The Insecure Girl's Handbook. And I'll explain why. A lot of us struggle with insecurity, imposter syndrome, and an inner critic. And yet, when we're going through those feelings, we believe like we're the only ones. And we look at our idols online and people we're inspired by, and we think they have it all. They're so lucky. And what that book did was kind of decode that for me. So it talked about Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, all these different people. And it talked about how they felt insecure at moments in their life. Yeah. And I thought that if I was sitting at a table with Michelle Obama and Taylor Swift and all of these other people, and they were telling me that they feel insecure, I'd be like, why? What the hell? That's crazy. And it often makes you realize that no matter who you are, no matter what you do, we all suffer with those things, and we are all the same. And I say that with my journey all the time. When people are like, oh, it's so amazing what you've done, I'm like, I really don't think that I'm any different. I think I just applied a structure and a technique. Yeah. If anyone can do it, I believe, like, genuinely, we are all the same at our core, and we all want the same things. And a lot of us struggle with the same things. And I realized that through my podcast, whether I'm interviewing people in Dubai or Mumbai or New York, I just did. All of us struggle with the same stuff. And when everyone's struggling with it, it doesn't make you feel like isolated from it. And isolation is the biggest thing that brings people down. It makes you feel like you're totally alone in a situation and there's no route to getting out. And that was one of the main reasons I started the podcast as well, was to provide a blueprint around loads of different topics so that someone could resonate with one of them and know that there's a way out.
I'm just going to take a slight detour with you for a second. In a world where there's so much exposure to people, right? So like you're talking about social, you're talking about representation. You see if anything, you could argue between your mom's generation and my parents' generation and ours, there's like so many more people saying it's okay to not be okay, and it's like it's really hard, and there is a model. Why do you think that isolation's heightened then? Like, why do you think that gap is? I feel like the gap's bigger because it's like, oh, there's so much stuff, and actually I can't do that. Whereas we didn't know that. Why do you think that's the case?
I think it's because there's so much information that people feel overwhelmed that they're not there yet.
Right.
So let's say I'm having a bad day, and I have been actually going through a bit of a tough time over the last month, and I isolate myself when I'm sad. I do not want to engage with my friends. I don't really want to engage with my family. When I'm there, I just like pop in, whatever, leave. Um, I am just like that. And I feel like it's because there's so many problems at the moment that everyone's going through. I don't want to add to people's list. There's also loads of solutions I can do myself. And I've also realized that with some things, there's no answers. And a lot of the time, when there's not an answer, a lot of us feel bad to kind of communicate because we feel it's complaining. We feel like it's moaning. We feel like, oh my God, there's also an overload of information that tells you that there's a solution for everything. And I think when there's that, you believe that you're the problem because you can't get to that solution yet. And I think that's what we've got to remember is like, it is a process. And I think there's also this notion of like, we must be happy all the time. And if we're not, there's something wrong with us because we're not like motivational enough. We're not positive enough. And there's so many good things to be alive about in the world. And we should be so grateful and all of this stuff. And that is true. But sometimes it takes people a little bit longer. And I think that's where people struggle to open up.
Yeah, I feel that. And let's dig into your podcast because I find it a source of a lot of light. For those that don't know it yet, because I'm sure they will now, you describe it as a podcast that dares to deep dive into the realms of the unseen, the unasked, and the unsaid. Each episode is a journey of discovery, challenging stereotypes, and breaking down taboos to unveil novel perspectives. The way I see it is it's a massive source of energy, insight, positivity, reassurance, confidence, validation, and representation for those that listen. Before you started doing the podcast, did you find yourself naturally supporting others in the way that you are now? Or did that podcast idea like switch something on and now it's like just a scale thing? Like, how did that first come about? Have you always been this way?
Yeah, I would say I have. I think it's really interesting because I think one of the things that I didn't know growing up was that people just always used to open up to me, like all the time. And I mean, like a stranger. And I always found it really weird. Like, I was like, why have they just told me that? Or like, why are they talking to me about that? I remember very clearly I went to go get my laser eye surgery. And this was probably when I was like 24, 25, can't remember. And I went there and the guy took me in and he said, oh, by the way, we just need to talk through some stuff before you go and see the surgeon. And I went to go and speak to him and he basically told me everything about the practice and was like telling me all the problems that were going on and all the issues he was having and all the troubles that they were going through. And I was like, I'm a customer. Why are you telling me this stuff? But I was helping him through that.
Right.
I did my eye surgery and the day after I did it, they went bankrupt. So that was great. So and actually he told me all those problems when I met him. And so I was like, wish I kind of listened to them a bit more and didn't do my eye surgery there. But I mean, hey ho. But I had this ability from a young age where people would come to me with their problems. My friends, my family, I'm the eldest child, I'm the eldest daughter. And I think a lot of people who are the eldest daughters will recognize that they are kind of like the go-to for people to come to. But I always had that within me. And I always had this curiosity to challenge opinions. Like my family would sometimes have quite radical opinions and things. And I'd always be like, but why? Like, but what's the reason? Like, why do we think that way? And I think I've always been like that. And that outspoken stuff has always come out. And the podcast was really like came at a good time because I remember I would be going to like parties or people's houses and I'd be the one in the corner, like talking to someone for like 3 hours. And my friends would be like, oh my gosh, Shivani, like stop like having a deep chat with someone about something. And I was like, yeah, I know, but like, I just want to talk about this. And I always find it interesting to talk about like different scenarios and like what would you do here and like learning about different things. And that was coming up a lot for me.
Yeah.
And when I started the podcast, everyone was like, classic. Now you're not going to be that person at a party that's doing it. You're just going to do it for your job. Or do it full time. Like not, I was doing it full time, but like do it like, more of that. So I think that has always been in me. I don't think that I was as empathetic sometimes or as, I guess, kind or, as positive a lot of the time. No, I wasn't. I was very lazy. I was never as motivated as I am now. I was never as determined as I am now. I was not as confident at points as I am now. But I think that the characteristics that you need to be a successful podcaster, I think I've always had those. Yeah, I just think they were pushed to the bottom because I thought they were bad traits.
Yeah. And how did you land with this genre, this topic, this title? Like, why did you choose to do this space? Like, you could have done anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think I've always been, I kind of went through, I guess the journey is I was going through a really bad breakup. in my life. And, you know, I think growing up, we were told to only focus on two things: your career and your relationships, get a good job, get a good husband. And when I was doing that, I was like, this is just so depressing. Like, what are we doing with life? Like, I always had this ability where I wanted to like do more.
Yeah.
Like, I would never say I was, when I say I was lazy, what I mean by that is I never pushed myself in my work, but I was never lazy. Like, I slept until 3 o'clock, went partying till really late. Like, that wasn't who I was. I never enjoyed that stuff. I did do it. I did go out, but I was never someone like at uni that went out 2 nights in a row or 3 nights in a row. Like, one night would be enough for me, and then I'd be like, all right, I'm done now. But I'd always be someone that wanted to connect people on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And I was going through this breakup, and I was like really learning a lot around personal development. And when I was learning about that, it was just mind blowing to me. Like, I found it so fascinating. I find it so interesting. I'm like so interested in how we can change our perspective. I find like that. I feel the most joy when someone gives me an alternative perspective and I learn it. And I'm like, oh my God, I never thought about it like that before. And so I started really getting these aha moments from things like that. And I just wanted to share them with people. And when I did that, I was like, I want to talk around like mindset. I want to talk around self-development. I want to talk around this stuff. I really want to talk about mental health because I feel like it's so ignored. And that about like 5 years ago, no one was really talking about it as much as they are now.
Yeah.
So I always knew I wanted to do that. And then I remember I wanted to call it the Indian problem. That was the first idea I had for the podcast, because I wanted to talk about the problems I was growing up with as an Indian girl living in the UK.
Yeah.
And I remember I told a few of my friends with that, and they were like, that's very negative. And I was like, it's quite negative, actually, isn't it? It sounds like there's a problem with being Indian, but there's not. And I think that translated into like, I wanted to talk about taboos and stereotypes. And then I was like, I don't know. And at the time, Simon Sinek was talking about millennials a lot, and like the lazy generation. And I remember being like, millennial is a good word. Like, what should I talk to? And then I remember I was on a run, and I just thought of a millennial mind. And I was like, that sounds catchy. Maybe I'll just do that. And I think that the thing is that we all believe we have to have a grand idea to start. We all believe we've got the branding right and the logo right. And to be honest, in hindsight, I kind of wish I did. But I've got somewhere from not having that stuff. And it just shows that a lot of the time we put the focus so much on like the marketing and the efforts, but we don't put the focus on the conversation. And so I just started having conversations around different topics. I knew I wanted it to be very varied. I knew I wanted guests on the podcast. And I knew that I wanted to have these aha moments in every podcast. And I just tried to do that every time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm running a really similar path. Like, it's really interesting. Not only just being the eldest, so I feel elder sibling problems. Yeah. And a side note, anyone else that's thinking of doing laser eye surgery, I think you should really look into it, because
the best thing in the world.
Changed my life. Yeah. So
changed my life. I was -7.5.
Yeah.
I couldn't see when I'd wake up. Now I'm like, oh my God, I still have nightmares about waking up blind though. So
no, it's still good.
It's the best. Sorry, I don't mean to put you off that. I'm just saying, like, I'm so like happy I have sight when I wake up that I have nightmares like it's going to be taken away from me. But
that's fair.
5 years still going strong. So
yeah, I think mine's about this a bit longer than that, and so many people have done it after. And I was like, if you're ever thinking about it, however numbers, and they say to you, why has it changed your life? And I'm like, it's not one thing, it's all the little things. It's not reaching for glasses, sunglasses, swimming pools.
Yes.
All the things. Anyway.
When you swim with goggles before, I was like, I can't see anything. Yeah. Now I can see. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. So if that gives you any confidence to go, the two of us can vouch for it. But yeah, starting this podcast, I did it for similar reasons. I just wanted a space, and I'm a marketer who cares about branding. I branded my own wedding. Like, everything's branded. My kids' parties are branded, but I went in with like, I just want to have conversations. Let's just try some. And we did a season, and now we're doing it. So yeah, I think just doing the thing, not worrying about how it looks and feels. If it feels good, like this, every episode fills my soul so much, and that's why I do it. I don't do it for anything else. I don't look at the numbers. I don't look where it goes. It's just great conversations with people around me. A lot of fun. So yes, I think just keep doing what you're doing. I wanted to kind of deviate a little bit wider. So you've branched out, not branched out. You've built out. I want to talk about your performance planner side of things, because I think it's a really interesting notion. You said before, it's not about people influencing your life always. It's not about things. Sometimes it can be like a process. It could be an idea, right? So I have a life coach, Mike, who was in season 1 with me. And over the last probably 12 years now, I have an annual process, review process, plan process, all of that stuff. And I'm a massive advocate. It's transformed my life. It transforms my relationships. It transforms my career and everything. you've got this whole world of performance planner to help people focus through through your learnings or through your experience. How did that come about? And what surprised you the most in sharing that with people? Because that's what I found is like, this is my process, I'll give it to you. And then they go and do something wonderful with it, or they respond in a way that I didn't think about. Like, how's that experience been for you?
It's really interesting because I look back at that point in my life when I was like 27, 28, 29, and I just think, can I swear on this podcast?
You can do whatever you want.
I just feel like, fucking hell, like I just had balls of steel.
Yeah.
Like, who did I think I was?
Yeah.
When people now tell me about the planner, okay, I'm going to go back to the story, but when people now say to me, who's your publisher? I'm like, what do you mean? And I had this realization recently because every Tom, Dick, and Harry has a planner now, right? And they're like, who's your publisher? And I'm like, I don't have one.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, hold on, how did you create your planner? And they went through like a publisher, or they went through a company, or they did it with someone else. My planner came about because I started the podcast. Through the podcast, I was going on this platform called Clubhouse. Do you remember it in lockdown?
Yeah.
It's a platform where everyone's having these conversations. And a lot of the time I would be on panels and I was talking about stuff. And people were saying, you give really good advice, you should do coaching. And I was like, well, I'm kind of doing I was doing a management consultant. So I was doing that with my job. I was like, yeah, but I don't have any experience. They were like, yeah, well, you don't need it. You just need to start doing. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm a consultant, so I do have some experience. And a lot of people were like, okay, I remember one person in the group was like, I'll pay you for it. And I remember charging £50 an hour, which is so funny, like to do the coaching. And I did it. And then I got more and more people. And I remember being like, there is just a really simple template that I've been using that I think you should be using to set your goals. This is how you do it. And I just thought, why don't I make it into a planner? And then loads more people can do it and they don't have to pay for the coaching. I went on to Canva. I designed what the planner should look like. I then went on to Alibaba and I found someone that could make it for me. And first of all, I did 6 months and the book came and it was like, I'll show you the planner right now. The planner is this size and this is 3 months. Yeah. The book came and it's like this big. And I was like, I can't sell this. It's like it was so heavy. I was like, what is this? And then I was like, no, it needs to be 3 months. Went back and we did it. And the first planner is so funny. I mean, it's just so ugly. Like I didn't get a graphic design. I did it all myself. Like, and I just did it. There was so many small touches I didn't have. I didn't have this here on the side. I didn't have the name at the back. I didn't have instructions in the front, like none of that stuff. I just did it. And I remember releasing it and people were like, huh? And I was like, I don't know why I've done this. Like, I just did it. But I was so confident in the idea.
Yeah.
Look, the planner is something that's a product service. And I'm going to be honest, I don't sell thousands and hundreds of them, if I'm completely honest, because I don't have the energy and the capacity to do it. And I'm going to touch on that in a second. But it came about because I just had an idea and I went for it. Yeah. And now when I think about it, I hold myself back so much more when I have an idea and I just don't go for it. And bearing in mind, I had my job, I have the podcast, and I had the planner at the same time, and I was doing the coaching. And that was actually really detrimental to me because I was doing all three of those things and none of them were doing that well. Like the podcast was still very low on numbers, like 50 views, 60 views, whatever. I had like 200 subscribers that were mainly my family and friends who I'd forced to when I saw them subscribe. And so I guess what's really amazing about this concept now is I'm able to go into organizations to help people on how to set their goals and do it properly. And then I'm able to now help people with my workshops. And, I have workshops every Sunday in my community where I go through different things around self-development, relationships, career, loads of other stuff. But the planner is so amazing when people reorder. That's like my favorite thing. Is like when people reorder, I'm like, oh my God, it's helping you. And I think that it just breaks everything down very clearly. And a lot of people have messaged me and said they've been able to quit their jobs. A lot of people have told me that they've been able to start a business. A lot of people have been able to tell me they've had more time for their relationships, just by setting their goals correctly and seeing everything from a bird's eye perspective. But I want to deviate and just talk about one thing about when you're starting something. First of all, we believe that there's a process in order to do something and you must follow that blueprint. Like think about someone who's done a planner. Now I would be like, well, I have to get a publisher on board. I have to go with a company that's already established. I have to go with a stationery company. I have to get all the procurement. I have to do this. I post the planners myself to this day. Like I do it myself. And you don't have to get a warehouse. You don't have to get a procurement company. Like You can just do things, break it down so simply. It's like when I went to New York just now, and everyone's like, wow, you went to New York to record a podcast. I'm like, honestly, all you need is a flight and a studio. Like, there's nothing that crazy about what I did, but we overcomplicate things so much now. And I think like that was the one thing that I learned when what I started was like, I just wasn't overcomplicating things. I was like, oh, I see you do a podcast. I'm going to do one. Oh, I see that this planner could help me. I want to do a planner. Oh, okay. How do I do it? I'll go on Alibaba and create the product myself. We need to like simplify things. And that's what I think I really do with this planner, is help people simplify these giant goals that they have, which are muddled with all this other external stuff. And we make it really easy for you to do. So
it's a beautiful thing. And I think it expands beyond the planner. I think it's what you do really well. I think you make it really easy for people because you go, it's this simple. And I know it's really hard for people to process, but someone just going, it's this simple is a complete other perspective if it's so complicated. And I just think you do that in so many ways with the people that you speak to, with the ideas that you have, the way that you share your journey as well. Everyone has your journey, like everyone has a version of your journey, but the way that you're able to simplify it, the way you're able to go, these are the choices I made, and this is why you can do it, and don't overcomplicate, I think is a power that you have. But I was going to basically say about about the confidence thing, just on a side note.
yes.
I got married, and I didn't have a job, and I had all the confidence in the world. And to get to that point, I had used every bit of my speaking ability, to convincing ability, to convince my partner that we were meant to be, and that is a lot deeper and one for another podcast. When I'm going to get her on here, by the way, this season. But I had all this confidence, but no substance. And now I have all this substance and so many streams and no confidence, or less confidence. And I think it's a really interesting dynamic, because you think, oh, I'll just rule the world forever. But actually over time, things change and deviate. And now I've got all this substance, but the confidence is a weird thing, and anxiety creeps in, and the world and the COVID and all that stuff. And it's really interesting, because this planner helps you focus, and planning and work focuses. And it's so simple, but it's yeah, a lot of people think, oh, I've got to do so much work.
I want to touch upon that. Why do you think that is? Because I went through this with someone the other day that I was coaching. Why do you think that confidence is going away when you've got more accolades and more things to do, to show for it, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of noise in the world. There's a lot more things. I think I was by myself at that point, living life freely and performing on stages and theatres around the world. Now I have a family, I have a mortgage, I have, you know, my stuff, I have my purpose project. Like, you just have so many things, and you go, I've strategically built this plate and it's spinning, and I'm going to go and do this one, and that one's great, that one's great. And now I'm stood here with like 10 spinning plates in the world, and it's going, oh, I've got an idea. And I'm, you know, one of my friends says I'm the sort of person that has ideas falling out of their pockets all the time. And what I've done over time is just carefully consider which ones I pick up, rather than go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I think that when you've got so many spinning plates, these ideas come to fruition, and then you go, oh, wait, where you're ready to go, where you normally go, let me go check it out, let me explore it, there might be something here, you just go, I can't take that on right now. So then you start to push them away. And I think that's where your confidence goes, oh, I can't do that again. I'm going to come back to it. And you talked about singing this morning. I was listening to your podcast, and it was something that you did actually to such a high grade and performed on stages and all that stuff, to then have the confidence where you're like, oh, everyone's so much better. It's a perfect example. I have been working with Samir Bamra, who was on here, who's a director of Physical, the theatre company. And we were going through old footage of the last like 20 years where I was on stage with so much confidence. And I was like, I don't know if I could do that. I want to do it so badly. But I don't know if I could do it, because everyone's so much better. Everyone's more talented, you know, and you just have this thing of like, oh, I'm not going to do it anymore. And you know, I heard your singing story this morning, and I thought it was really similar. That's what happens. The confidence seems to just slip. The talent might be there, and the skills might be there, but the confidence stops you from taking that step.
I think it's a different thing, and I'll explain why. I was talking to someone the other day, and she was saying, I've done this, and my confidence to get to here was this. So now she's here. But the confidence you need to get to here is way more, because now there's an expectation on you.
Yeah.
So when I was singing in school, when I was younger, I would sing with my bar. I like her Pudgeon things, you know, and I would sing, and everyone would be like, oh, you're so good. And then I would sing in front of other people, and I'd be like, fine. Then I started doing like concerts and like competitions, and I would feel so nervous because the expectation was there. Then I got to like grade 8 in singing, and I was like, the expectation is there. So now when I sing, it's no longer, oh, Shivani's so sweet, she can sing. It's like, well, she's a grade 8 singer, so she must be amazing.
Yeah.
Therefore, I have to be amazing. And I think even with the work that we're doing, I have the confidence where I am right now with my podcast. But in order for, like, for example, I did my goal setting workshop with 100 people over last year. Now, if I want to do it with 200 people, I might be fine because it's not that much of a dip. If I want to do it in front of 1,000 people, it is totally, the level of confidence I need is totally different. The level of self-belief I need is totally different. And we think that is the same, and it's not, because we think we've reached our peak. But actually, the easiest thing is to jump into something else. So how I describe it is, let's say I'm in level 1 of my goal setting workshop. For me to now jump and do another idea and get from level 0 to level 1 is much more comfortable than me getting from level 1 to level 2. And so that's why so many of us have so many different ideas, is because it's much easier to start a new idea and become good at it rather than becoming very good or outstanding at the idea that we've currently got. And that's a lesson I've had to learn. I've had to scrap off an idea that I had this year. I was like, I have a new idea and I'm going to do it. And then I was like, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
You're doing it. What is the goal with that? Like, the goal is not to do that. The goal is to be the #1 podcast. So why are you deviating away from that to make yourself feel better? Yeah. Because I don't want to do the things that I can do because they're so much harder and it's so boring. And it's like, oh, I just want to do something different. But like, you have to stick with it.
Yeah, you do. And focus really helps. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about technology just for a minute, because I spent 3 years going around the world filming documentaries of how connectivity and the internet has changed people's lives. And I've seen it firsthand from like mobile money, digital identity, climate change, all this amazing stuff that's happened in education. And that was the root of Rainbow Boosters, which essentially, because I've seen firsthand that giving people like technology and access to the internet can change their world, I was like, how can I do that in a small way? So that's what we did. That's why we set up that computer lab in India. How has like technology or like even education in its broader sense, like played a role for your personal professional success? Like your podcast needs technology. Yeah. Like how has it played that role? How have you found it? And then like, how do you grow with it?
Well, I think without technology, I wouldn't be able to have a podcast, would I? Because I did it first, on audio. I had to learn how to edit and use all this different software, which I had no idea how to do. I had to YouTube it, ask friends, like ask random people that I'd never spoken to. Then I went on to Zoom, then I used Riverside. Then after that, I obviously got a studio, and still now, like with all the editing, like I just was editing this morning, and there's loads of transitions I have to do and loads of cuts I have to make. And I'm like, oh my God, it's kind of crazy that like you have to learn all this stuff. Yeah. But I actually think technology is so wonderful. And I think we give it a lot of slack and, a lot of stick, sorry. And I think we need to cut it some slack. I think that there are loads of bad things on the internet, but there are so many amazing things on the internet. And I really believe that you can completely change your life by listening or watching things on the internet. Like I listen to a motivational talk every single morning. I listen to Kirtan every single day. And if I wasn't able to do that, then how happy would I actually be? Not sure, because maybe no technology would make me happy, but I wouldn't be able to do my podcast. I wouldn't be able to share it with the world. I wouldn't be able to have, debates online. I wouldn't be able to understand different perspectives. And I think that you have to choose how you spend your time online. And that's really difficult. And I scroll all the time, by the way. Like I do have that bad habit. And we all do. And that doesn't make me, like a bad person. It just means that I have a bad habit doing that. And sometimes we're like so harsh on ourselves, like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person if I scroll. We all flipping do it. Yeah. Everyone does it, and it's totally normal. But you've got to limit that and actually consume things that are going to make you feel better, consume things that are going to change your life. There is an answer for every problem you have on YouTube. And I think that is the most wonderful thing in the world. Sometimes you can't talk about your problems. Sometimes you can't even say them out loud. Yeah. But there's an answer on YouTube for it. And I love that.
Yeah, I think curating your experience is definitely something that I've taken recently. Periodically, I'll just go through and like stop following loads of people and then find something new. And just follow new people. So my feed looks different, because now it's like if I see something that makes me feel sad, I'm like, oh, they're overachieving, and why can't I do that? If I have that sense, I just stop following them, because I'm like, their reality, my reality is different. Or if I see stuff that's going on, I'm like, why am I learning how to cook grilled toasties? I don't even like, cheese or whatever. Like, get rid of it. Like, find the Indian cuisine stuff. Like, constantly curating your feed. Nice. And my like Spotify playlist is one of those things as well. So yeah, I think it's great advice. I mentioned earlier a little bit about your podcast, Millennial Mind, and it shines a light and acts as a place where people feel heard and seen. What role does representation play when you think about the rural boys and girls that we're helping and their dreams and aspirations? Because the divide's massive. Like, they're getting onto the internet for the first time, they're seeing the world. Like, at that point, what does representation do for you when you've only seen people who look and sound like you your whole life?
I mean, I think that growing up, I didn't see any strong Indian women.
Yeah.
I didn't see any. And it was only when my mum introduced me to her cousin who was in the UK for a book tour, you know, that I saw a strong, confident Indian woman. And I was like, oh, we can be like that. We don't have to shy away.
Yeah.
And all I want genuinely is for girls to know how powerful they are, like how amazing they are, and boys too, you know. But I think boys are told a lot more to be braver, to be stronger, to be confident. And I think girls are taught to be shy, to be submissive, to just listen. And I think my messages for young people is to really know that you have a strength within you, even if you're not the best in school, even if you're not getting the best grades, even if your mom and dad tell you off all the time, you have something special about you. That's why you're here. And I want all of them to know that they all have that within them and they just need to hone in and find it. And what the biggest secret, I think, to happiness is to like, and I was reading this book called The New Happy, and she said the biggest thing for happiness is find your strength and share it with others. Yeah. If we're all trying to be like everyone else, we're never going to be happy. I honestly could get into a mindset where I look at girls on the internet, I just think they're so beautiful. They have the best body, they have the best eyes, they have the best smile, they have the best this, they have the best this. Or I can look at myself and think about what I have as the best. And you may not think that's the best about me, but I can think it's the best about me. Yeah. And I can share that with other people. And I think that's what we need to do more of. I took the kids and Bhavika to the school this year. And one of the things I realized is that people, the students there, were going online for the first time and doing their first Google. And I was like, that's such a bonkers mentality that they're typing into Google for the first time. And what they were doing is they'll put in their village names and they were like trying to zoom in and figure out where they were. Like, do you remember the first time you went online? Because for me, it was all about like in the hallway, unplugging the phone, plugging it in, dial tone, chat room, forum, just, oh, there's other people here. Like, do you remember your early experiences of getting online? I don't. I do remember having Facebook and MSN. And I also remember going on holiday, and I wasn't allowed Facebook or MSN, but I obviously had it. But I remember just like loving it so much, like, because I wasn't allowed it. So when my dad would come home, we'd have to turn it off, or like when they'd come in, we'd have to like go on another window. But I just remember going on holiday and they would have like a business suite and you could use the internet for free. And I was like, oh my God, I just sit there all day on holiday. My parents would be like, what are you doing? Get outside or in the sun. And because actually then you'd only get like an hour for free. You just use the hour. But I do remember going to like the Apple store and logging into my Facebook and things like that because I was so obsessed with it at the time. But no, I don't remember the first time, but I just do remember that there was that addiction from that young age for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I want to give you your flowers a little bit. It's the expression. For those that follow and support you, you know, you're clearly a beacon of light for them. I've spent a week just deeply researching you, so I feel like you're everywhere in my world. And everything I link to, someone that I know is like liked it or commented, and I was like, okay, this is a nice, happy place to be. You know, your tone is really open, and you're trying to like lay out the truth and just frame the world in a way that is manageable and that people can get through, and you're putting it in all the right places from a content point of view. And that's really why I wanted you on here as a ray of sunshine. Like I just think that that's what you are for so many people. And I love that you're that for yourself as well. Like, I love the fact that you hold yourself in that way that you're like, I know what I am and I know I'm not. And that's what's important. But like your discussions around finances, gender equality, like the corporate challenges you've had, generational differences, cultural challenges, there's so many things there that are extremely valuable for people to do. Where did that passion and purpose to do it really come from? Because you're there shining light in, you know, people's grey clouded days to have a fuller life. Like, where does that come from? Why do you care so much, Shivani? It makes me so happy. Like, everyone always says to me now, it's funny, I did a session with someone the other day, and we were mapping out all the different things I was doing. And she was like, if you could do one thing, what would you do? I was like, the podcast. still every day. And every time someone asks me, they're like, do you still love it as much? I'm like, I cannot tell you how happy I feel when I do it and after. And I find it really difficult when I don't record. So actually, when I went to Mumbai last year and I came back, I didn't record any podcasts for 3 months and I felt so low. Even for the last month, because I went to New York, I've only recorded like one.
Yeah.
And the other day when I recorded one, I was like, oh, thank God. Like I can never stop doing these because it kills me when I don't have it. Like it really, really does.
Yeah.
And there is no greater feeling than when you've helped someone have a breakthrough. There is literally no greater feeling. Imagine if I sit here and I'm like, oh my God, that completely like shit. Like I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And like I can do that. And you make someone believe in themselves. There's no better feeling in the world. And you become addicted to it. And I have, like,
Yeah.
I love doing it. That's the problem though, sometimes is that I often will want to help people more when I don't have the time or the energy to. And I've had to get better at that. But, you know, I've always had that like want and need to like change someone's perspective on something. And I mean that in a
It's so good.
positive way, not in like a negative way. Like even
Yeah.
if you're reframing, like reframing for me is like the most amazing thing. When someone reframes something for me, I'm just like, oh my God, thank you. That's just like changed everything for me.
Yeah.
Or they give me an analogy. I remember I went to Warwick and I asked the lecturer, and this I talk about this all the time because it's like my favorite analogy. I asked the lecturer, can I go to the toilet? And he was like, why are you asking me? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, why are you asking me? Like, what would you say if someone said that to you?
Like, yes, go and do what you need to do. Yeah.
He was like, who's it going to impact if we start this class late because you go to the toilet?
Right.
I was like, well, everyone else. And he was like, so ask them. And I was like, what? Like, I thought it was going to be like me, like it's going to impact you. And I was like, no, it's actually going to impact the rest of my teammates. Like us sitting in this classroom, if I come back late, it's going to impact them. So should I ask them or should I ask the teacher? I should ask them. Like, guys, do you mind if we start 2 minutes late because we just need to pop to the toilet? And so many of us like think in this one narrow dimensional way. And things like that just completely change my mind. It's like when you have a list in front of you, why'd you start from the top down? Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
I give you a list of 10 things to do. I haven't told you that it's a priority. It's your assumption.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we all assume things based on our lives.
Yes.
And things like that just like helped me see things. And they gave me so much joy. And when I would share them with like my friends, they'd be like, oh my God. And then I was like, I can share them with other people. And then other people were like, oh my God. And you just become like, you want to learn more and do more. And I think that like it's always this process of growing and changing and evolving and just being better. And that gives you so much happiness, you know? And I think that's why I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, I'm getting the same bug. I said it to you earlier, my soul feels renewed and full every time I have conversations with people, and I can see how that works. And I that ripple effect of like an idea that travels is so powerful, and I can see why you're doing it. So one of the things that you do, which is selfless giving, it's about helping others. One of the big calls to action for us in everything that I do as well is like trying to get people to help beyond themselves, like help one person, service to others. Like, why is it so important in this day and age to help others, to do something for someone else, even if it's like just one person? Why do you think it's so important for us to do that?
You know what? I think that this idea of seva has been around for a long time in our culture. And I always used to find it a bit annoying when people online would be like, I'm just doing this for service. Because I'm like, no, you're not. You're a liar. You're not just doing this for service. It's like you're getting a lot of out of it.
Mm.
And I realized what you're getting out of it. Because the other day, I was having a really bad day and I had a workshop and I'd had to reschedule the workshop because I was on a cruise for my past birthday. And I just didn't want to do it. And I was like, but this is my community and people have paid for it, so I have to do it. And I went on the call and I did a workshop. And at the end of it, they said to me, you know, you really helped me today. You know, like you have no idea how much you helped me. And you know what that gave me? A sense of value.
Mm.
It gave me this sense of importance. It made me realize that I have something. Like I'm a good person, like I have value to offer.
Right.
And in this world, you know, in the fast-paced world that we're living in, we all want to feel like we've got value to give. And that's what I was talking about, the strength. We all do.
Yeah.
And the more that you tune into your strength and the more that you share that, the more you're going to help someone and the more they're going to help you. And they're only going to help you because they're going to make you realize how special you are.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about service. When we say selfless service, I don't know if you watch Friends, but Phoebe was like, there's no good deed that you can do that's selfless. And it's true. I don't believe there is, because you get a great feeling from it. You get a high. The best feeling is when you help someone and they've been like, that's really helped me. Thank you. And you're like, oh, I'm actually like useful for something. Oh, I actually did. Like, even if it means like, hey, can you hold this while I put this up then? You've helped someone, they're like, oh, thank God you saved my life for that. And you're like, oh, like what it does. And this is the thing, is like, if you're not doing it for someone else, do it for you.
Yeah.
If it starts that way, do it for you. Because what you're going to realize is that you have something special that's going to help someone else. And it's only going to help you.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to do things for other people because you see yourself in a different light. You see yourself in a totally different way where you realize that the world isn't about you. The objective isn't about you. You're not the only person that's living here. And you have the power, you have the ability to change someone else's life, whether that's through a smile, whether that's through a hug, whether that's through a conversation, whatever it is. You really do have that power. And I think that the more and more we start thinking about how we can help others, happier we're all going to be.
Yeah, I can't validate that point enough. When I went to India for the launch of Rainbow Reasons last year, when I came back, everyone was like, how was it? You know, you must have changed their life. You must have done. And I said, yeah, it was amazing, but it changed my life. Like,
Yeah, they changed
all
your
those,
life.
it changed my life. Like, the feeling that I got off the result of helping someone else was beyond what I expected. So I can't reiterate how important it is. Right. At the end of these things, it'd be a missed opportunity as well, because of having someone as inspirational as you on the podcast. Have you got a quote or a message that you live by that inspires you throughout your life and that, you know, it continues to motivate you in that way? I'm going to sandwich yours though, because I've come across so many that you've given in the last week of doing research. The first one, which is basically written down on this piece of paper that I'm sketching my next tattoo, which says, "We are our choices." Because I was listening to your conversation with Mo Gaudet on his Slow Mo podcast, and you were talking about how actually everything is just about the choices that we make, and I love that so much. So I'm going to put that out there for everyone. You know, Jean-Paul Sartre is a French philosopher and playwright, and he said that we are our choices. And any given situation, you can stop and go, I made this choice to be here. And when you realize that, everything changes for you. So that's one that you reminded me of, and that's so close to my heart that I wanted to share. What's one for you that you use?
Oh God, there's so many. This is so hard. Okay, can I give two?
You can give as many as you want.
One is by Zig Ziglar, and he says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I love that so much, because so many of us never want to start as beginners and we want to be like amazing, but no one is born out of the womb like Bill Gates. No one is born out of the womb Steve Jobs. They have to do loads of things together. Yeah. And then the other one is by Einstein, when it's, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life thinking it's a failure. And I think that's so powerful, because so many of us don't know our own strengths, and we're trying to jump onto what society tells us, and we spend our whole life thinking it's a failure. And that's exactly what I thought about myself, because I was like, oh, I must do this, this, and this, and if I don't, I'm a failure. And now I'm, you know, swimming in a pond as a fish rather than climbing a tree. And I feel that, you know, when your environment is right and when you find what you're aligned with, you can flourish. So those are two of my favorites, but I've got loads, like millions, I could tell you.
I bet you could write a book with your findings. No, they're beautiful. Thank you for sharing those. You reminded me of the 10,000 hours idea. You know, people want to just get to the top, and actually you got to put your 10,000 hours into to at least do that. So make a start and see where you get to. I think that's cool. On your website, this is how much talking I've done. On your website, you've got this quote, and I wanted to end with this quote because I think it frames how I feel our conversation's been, what I'm trying to do, what you're trying to do. One day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will be part of someone else's survival guide. It's a quote you've used from Brent Brown. And I just think that legacy, that ability to share learnings, that whole being a ray of sunshine for somebody else is that it's going, look, you're going to be all right, and here's why, and here's how I can help you, and this bit can help you out. So I think it's beautiful. I think it's a great core of what you're doing. I think you're incredible. wishing you all the best for your continued success and growth. And I'm looking forward to watching and seeing what else you do next, and listening avidly, and hoping that we can collaborate on some stuff as well in the future. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking a little moment out of your very busy schedule to talk to me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found some inspiration in our conversation. As a reminder, this Rays of Sunshine series is linked to the Rainbow Boosters project, where we're supporting underprivileged children by connecting them to the internet and a community to ensure that they don't get left behind in a digital world. At the heart of this campaign is an idea called conscious giving. By donating both time and money to the project, you have the ability to directly see the impact that you're having. From getting regular updates to having Zoom calls with students to even visiting the school in person, Rainbow Boosters can have as much of a positive impact on your life as it does on the people that we support. If you're looking for a cause to support and in a position to donate, then please do so now on the links below or at rainbowboosters.com. The next episode will be with you soon, and thank you for being a ray of sunshine.